I know this isn't a normal video I would make, but I had a realization one day as I was sitting, wasting away, binging YouTube. And that's that I'm wasting my fucking time. I gotta start making shit again, man. So while I am clearly not qualified and no one will care, I decided to write a script and edit together a video about something that I like. That something is Akumetsu. Akumetsu is that good shit. Not some of that pansy-ass My Hero Hunter Naruto piece slayer. I'm not even gonna sit here and pretend that I know anything about this manga's creation or the people behind it. They are awesome, I'm sure. If I had to explain this story in one sentence, it would be Death Note, but good. I know that's a pretty insane thing to say, but hopefully I can get you to agree by the time this video is up. Let's start at the beginning, shall we? Our story starts out with a masked guy talking about how Japan is in huge debt, and then shows a cute little meeting between a couple of high-ranking business officials and some underage schoolgirls. Then, a funny little man appears. It turns out these business officials have been a wee bit naughty and are stealing the money of the good people of Japan. Oh no! Our masked friend, colloquially named Akumetsu, doesn't really like that. So, what does our masked friend do? Well, he bops the head of the nearest businessman he sees, then drags his body around the building before fucking exploding. Sheena, a young girl who was held up in that den of tigers, actually knew who Akumetsu was. But seeing him die right in front of her? What is she supposed to do? How's she supposed to go back to school knowing her friend died?
How the fuck is this guy alive?
Akumetsu has you asking questions right from the get-go, but before it gives you answers, it throws you back into the violence theater. The fact is, Japan is in serious debt and is going in the shitter, all because of these ugly and corrupt politicians. So, our main protagonist, Sho, takes it upon himself to get in there and do the dirty work that no one else will. Akumetsu is a gruesome story, with tons of blood and killing all over the place. But man, if it isn't one of the most fun and addictive stories I have ever read. Seeing the psychological duels of Light versus L and Lelouch versus fucking everyone, those stories are without a doubt incredible, yet they pale in comparison to Akumetsu's duels of much less psychology and much more hands-on murder. The reason? Well, there are two. Firstly, Sho is on the same level as Light and Lelouch in terms of how much of a mastermind he is in the story. Secondly, it is very easy for someone to hate and despise politicians, especially when they are so well written like an Akumetsu. This is well showcased a bit later on in the story when Akumetsu shows the world the far reach that the banks have in the ways of fucking the citizens. Akumetsu shows footage of real Japanese citizens getting fucked over by the banks, inciting what is some of the most real hatred a person could have. Light may have the secret backing of people on the internet, and Lelouch might have the secret backing of the Japanese people. But Sho has the real backing of the Japanese people. By publicly broadcasting everything he does, and publicly explaining his views and thoughts to the public, he stops potential panic and increases his support. All of this is to say that Sho is one of the most intriguing and incredible protagonists in any story I've read, and that isn't including later parts of the story,
Which I don't want to get into yet.
If you are still having a hard time deciding whether or not to read this gut-wrenching masterpiece, then just look at the art! Okay, I think you get my point. It's honestly really hard for me to try and sit here and write this script to convince someone to embark on the wild adventure that I went on. When I first read Akumetsu, I simply gave it a shot after coming home from school one day and proceeded to read all 162 chapters in one day. I was so engrossed in the story that I completely forwent dinner, and by the time I realized it, it was 2 a.m. I rarely, if ever, get that invested into a story, so already I'm so biased when it comes to this manga. I can't give Akumetsu a rating out of 10. I couldn't objectively look at its flaws and point them out. I sure as hell couldn't parade how this manga is deeper and more unique than everything else out there, because it isn't. I can say, however, that if you haven't taken a basic level economics class, you won't understand a fucking thing in this manga. It has long, lengthy explanations of how someone in a government position could move people's funds like it's their own pocket money. The whole story is about the attempt to spur the economical growth of Japan from the Prime Minister. Therefore, it talks extensively and debates between the different methods politicians want to use to actually grow Japan's economy. It can get complicated really quick, and you could honestly learn something from it. The issue that stems from this extremely high-level economics is that it is very easy for someone to start flipping through the pages to skip past it. It's overly complex, and for most low IQ people, such as me, can become a large barrier to the enjoyment of the series. Luckily, however, the overt politics and economics quickly get out of your way and let you continue enjoying this seriously awesome art, story, and characters. Now, before I talk about the full plot of Akumetsu, I'm going to take a second here to let anyone who hasn't read the story take this chance and go read it for themselves. A lot of the questions I talked about earlier will be answered in this next segment, which takes a lot of the fun out of the ride that is Akumetsu. So, while you still have the chance, either go read it or click over to this timestamp to skip the spoilery bits of the video. Are they gone? Great! Then let's talk about a kid named Katsuragi. Katsuragi is a high school genius who's good friends with our protagonist, Sho. He works trading stocks as well as being an acclaimed author, so he comes off as not wanting to give any effort in school. But, as it turns out, the real reason is that Katsuragi is dying due to cancer and is depressed that the world will continue without him even there. However, he didn't just get cancer, it was given to him. You see, Katsuragi was born with an extremely rare disease that causes a specific protein to not develop, which makes it so he will continue to bleed indefinitely. His treatment was a fibrinogen concentrate, which would have been fine if not for the fact that it had been contaminated knowingly with hepatitis C, which caused Katsuragi's liver cancer. Finding this out, Sho is pissed for Katsuragi, knowing some bureaucrat who didn't give a shit was in fact killing his best friend. Before Sho can do anything, Katsuragi calms him down before going to the bath.
Hey! Katsuragi! What the you thinking? Katsuragi!
Katsuragi tries to take his own life, inadvertently wounding Sho near death.
I'm begging you, live! You can't die for me! There's absolutely no reason for it! Absolutely none!
Katsuragi manages to get Sho's heart pumping again, but before he can keep him still, Sho gets up and drives away, bloody and dying. Katsuragi spends a while looking for Sho to no avail, until one day, he suddenly reappears in front of him. Except, it wasn't Sho. Or rather, it was a different Sho. This new Sho takes Katsuragi to his dead friend and discloses the secret that leads this whole series. Down underneath the ground is an underground lab that hosts all of the Shos. They explain that because of the work of one man began a cloning facility which they use to not only clone the Shos, but transfer their memories from one another. In fact, all of the Shos are clones of the original man who made the facility, just without all of the shitty memories from him. The Sho that Katsuragi knew wanted the research and strides the Shos had made to allow Katsuragi to be reborn in a new body, so he could keep on living. That's why he drove off that night. Through the technology present at the facility, they are able to clone and revive Sho Nikura, who continues his life where he left off. Months pass, and Katsuragi ends up in the hospital to deal with his cancer. The progress to try and use the cloning facility to clone Katsuragi is not going well, and they want to get someone more specialized in the field to look into it. But Katsuragi stops them. He wants Sho to become an Ubermensch, a superhuman being that can use the power of cloning to completely eradicate the fear of death and fight against the villains in society. His death cemented this idea, and thus Akumetsu was born. The story is somewhat strange, yet it's a perfectly reasonable explanation for the extremely incredible powers that Sho possesses. In the end though, the clone facility ends up being discovered, and in an attempt to draw Sho out, the local Yakuza, yes, the Yakuza get on this because the government is too bad to stop it, end up threatening him with his classmates at school. Then, while he is trapped at the school, keeping his classmates safe, they force Sho to reveal how to enter the cloning facility in an attempt to take it for themselves. Luckily, in the nick of time, the other Akumetsus break into the Yakuza's headquarters, as well as stop the breach on the cloning facility. All the while, the main Sho is fighting off the forces in the school. However, in the crossfire, Sheena is hit by a bullet and is bleeding out. The last thing Sho can do is try and save Sheena's life. He takes her down to the cloning facility, and the fruits of the scientific labor from Katsuragi's time come to fruition. Sho chooses to sacrifice himself in the end and revive Sheena to live on. Unfortunately, for the sake of time, I'm skipping through a lot of the details of the conclusion to this series, but hopefully that will encourage those who haven't read it to do so. There is much more to the final arc of this story than what I could logically explain, and reading it for yourself is the best way to experience the full scope of the plot. Akumetsu is a wild ride. It's funny, it's crazy, it's chaotic, but most of all, it's incredibly good. In nearly all aspects, I consider it a masterpiece. From the story, to the characters, to the art, it's all impeccable. The ending arc was executed perfectly and gave a satisfying conclusion to everything. Maybe I couldn't convince you it was better than Death Note, but at the very least, I hope I convinced you to give Akumetsu a try. Thanks for watching this video, folks. I've never made one like this before, so I hope it turned out alright. This is by far the most work I've put into anything in my entire life. If people like this video, then I'm a happy guy and I might do more. Also, huge shoutouts to my good friends who did some voice acting for this video. I appreciate ya a hell of a lot. Thank you. Anyway, I guess that's all from me. However, I do have just one more thing.